All right, guys. Welcome to episode 11 of your favorite.
Love him.
Welcome to the show, guys. We have Rami Ibrahim, founder of Rami Elite, freedom fighter promotions, and amongst other things, he's the first Palestinian to do many, many things in the U.S. Welcome to the show, Rami.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Today, we're going to be talking about some issues. I think the main issue. Did we lose him?
We lost him. Hopefully, we get him.
Oh, Rami. Well, we want to talk.
Push the wrong button. Oh, here he is.
He's back. We
Thank you
lost
for having
you,
me,
Rami. It's a peekaboo. He played peekaboo with us. So we're gonna be talking about an important issue that we have in the Muay Thai world now, and it used to be that amateurs in general or fighters in general couldn't get fights, but now as an amateur, you can stay busy almost every month. You'd be fighting almost every week if you really wanted to. You could fight quite often, and so. But now the bottleneck here are the pros, and there's not enough competition. There's not enough fights. There's not enough promoters for a pro to have a decent career where they can sustain themselves and make a living. And I invited my friend Rami to as he is a promoter. He's been promoting a very successful show, putting on pro bouts all over the world, and wanted to kind of spitball with him some ideas. It might be a little bit radical. We can do some hypotheticals where, in a situation where we can have whatever we want. Would this situation, particular situation, work for pro divisions? And so one of the things we discussed was making a pro, instead of saying that it's a pro fighter, and saying that it's a pro fight, and the fighter's just a fighter, and you designate pro and you title it as it's just a fight that you got paid, and amateur is a fight that you didn't get paid. And the way they would match would be, according to that. Rami, what are your thoughts on that? And what's your opinion on all of this, and how we can, better promote the pro divisions in the U.S.?
I think one thing definitely is about how a person chooses to title the fight. So you can say elites instead of saying it's a pro fight. And to the rest of the world, the eastern side of the world, there is no if you're pro you can't fight anything else, like you only can fight pros. There's tournaments, there's events where you could fight in that you won't get paid, that you will still probably have to wear gear, and you might go against an amateur fighter. So it's I think my opinion is that this is something that America and the western side of the world needs to do more. Needs to start doing, first of all, so we can give our pro fighters more opportunities. One simple way that we can do it is where we leave an option where, like, go back to the old school days: C class, B class, A class, and if you want elite, so, or you could say novice, intermediate, and then elite. And
There's somebody commenting on here, and they made a good point. And she was saying, I think it's Carly Joe, and she was saying that there's certain amateurs that she feels deserve to get paid. And I can't say that I don't disagree. That I disagree with her. I kind of agree. I've seen some amateur fights that are at the caliber of a pro level fight. They're fighting full contact, elbows. The only thing they're really not doing is fighting with knees to the face. But for the most part, man, those fights get bloody. they get ruthless, you know, and not to mention a lot of these amateurs sell a ton of tickets,
With
right?
that said, yeah, I agree with you. This past weekend, I had 9-year-olds that fought better than some pros that I
I
know.
believe it. I
And
believe it,
and I'm
bro.
not just saying they were entertaining. They were entertaining, and they actually had great technique, great execution of a game plan that you like see at elite level. And I'm gonna choose my words wisely. Instead of saying I paid the money, I sponsored them. After the fight, I sponsored them.
Nice. That's dope.
You know,
That's really cool, man.
yeah, as she said, some amateurs do deserve to get paid. You know,
I
but
agree.
you know, like this is something that we as a community should really look into as far as the pros, the topic that we're on, fighting and getting more opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I would think there would be a lot more fight opportunities in general. And instead of going and saying like, oh, you know, how many pro fights, how many amateur fights, the real metric should be how many fights, right? Like if you go to Thailand, they're not looking to see, oh, how many amateur, how many pro. They just ask you how many fights do you have?
Yep.
Because it's all the same to them. It's time in the ring, right? You have 50 amateur
Not
fights.
how many YDLs, how many smokers, how many amateur fights, and then how many pro fights.
Right. It's just how many fights. You know, I remember I think we fought on the same card, Rami, in Thailand, and you fought a legit Thai
That's
from
good.
Joe Samrit. Yeah, that dude was legit. It was a nice scrap. And he fought to a draw, which I didn't think it was a draw. I didn't think they wanted to give it to him, to be honest. But it was a great fight. And I remember they didn't ask you how many amateur or pro fights. They just ask you how many fights you had, and they match you accordingly. And that's essentially how it works. Is like, you know, how many fights do you have? If you go to Europe, how many fights do you have? And they match you accordingly. They don't care if it's amateur or pro. You know, we've had some Europeans come out to the U.S. Open, and they get a little confused because, you know, they weren't aware. A lot of them are not aware that amateur and pro are a type of athlete. They are like Rami said, it's a type of fight.
But
You
they're
know,
right, because the definition, right? If you go by definitions here, amateur definition is an athlete or a person of a discipline that doesn't get paid. And a professional, the only thing that changes is they get paid. And
it's true.
that's not a status, you know, in most things, it's just a definition of, you know, that particular instance. You were paid for this, you were not paid for it. And, you know, yeah.
So we at the U.S. Open are trying to kind of solve that. And we started a pro division. We have a pro division in our tournament. Um, Unfortunately, amateurs cannot compete in the pro division because of the state law. But we do have a pro division. We actually, for the first time, have a 3-man bracket in the pro division. And the rule is that you cannot make your pro debut on our show. So you'll have to have a pro fight before you fight on the U.S. Open. But it was difficult to get. It was extremely difficult to get. We're very lucky that, you know, kind of Bob and the commission worked with us on finding a solution that fits the law, and we could make it happen. But on a technically, it's an amateur fight because we're not paying those pros. It's just for experience, and those fighters need fights. You know what I mean? Um, it comes down to really like the state, right? And then, you know, we go to Iowa. I know TBA is putting on their pros and amateur. They have a division. They still have that division, Rami, the pro am, or is it just pro now?
In which one?
The TBAs.
No, I think they still have the same thing going on.
This still is like pro am. So my only issue with that is I won't put my my lower level A class guys because they might get stuck with a Luke Lessie on, and they're still amateurs. So it's like it's a little tricky, right? Like you have to be careful with those divisions, but at the same time, if you're a pro and you're looking to fight and you need some ring time, it's a great solution is to compete in tournaments that allow it.
The option should be there, and it's for the fighters and the trainers to choose whether they want to go into it or not. Like I think one thing would be good, obviously like what you're doing is the safest bet, and still giving opportunities for pro fighters to go, and that's the safest way, and everybody can still get opportunities this way. And if anybody wants to up it up a notch, in some states I know we can get away with it, whereas you have pros going with really experienced amateurs, but it wouldn't be called amateur or pro, it would be called elite. And that's what it comes down to. Bottom line is how you name the fight, so right. You have novice, intermediate, and elite.
Right, like Rami elite. Yeah, man. I mean it's I agree with the name of naming it is important. The way what you call it kind of defines it, right? And I don't think we should I don't think that we should be doing divisions where it's pro and am. And I think that came from more of a boxing thing, where because there's so many millions of dollars in boxing, it kind of translated to all these other martial arts and fight sports. Unfortunately, we're stuck with the boxing rule of thumb, which is pro is a paid athlete and amateur is a non-paid athlete. But by the Olympic standard, that doesn't apply anymore. Am I right about that? Like, from my understanding, I think the pro boxers are allowed to compete.
So now that's what I was going to say, actually. You have the Olympics in many sports where you have pro fighters or pro athletes, even in other sports, competing with people that are amateur.
Look at basketball. It's soccer. 100%. They're all professionally, highly, highly, highly paid athletes.
And you still get people that will beat these pro stars.
Right. I would love to see something like that where
I know a few, Tiago, and and I'm sure I could name you a few where we have some amateurs that will most likely beat a pro.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we all know somebody that is amateur that can beat that pro. So it's not black and white.
There's a lot of people out there that are scared to turn pro for the sheer fact that they just, they're used to fighting every month.
Well, I give you
as soon as you make that transition, you're not fighting anymore. You're at the whim of what? 3? How many pro promoters are there in the whole country? Not a lot.
Tiago, Ahmad Alatma, Syrian kid. He just turned 18. And I turned him pro. And everybody started messaging me, why did you do that to him? You're going to hold his career back. And I'm like, listen, this is the right thing. Even though I myself was like you guys and be like, oh, you shouldn't turn pro so early. Now I understand, being the promoter that, I can give him fights, and the sport has to grow with pro fighters. The sport will not grow if we don't have pro fighters, So I got a lot of heat for turning this kid pro, but I feel like this is what we need to do to make our sport get bigger, because, okay, we keep it amateurs and amateurs and amateurs and amateurs. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to go?
And right now, like even as a pro, like what a lot of people, maybe the layperson doesn't understand is that a pro purse is not that much, not compared to the work they put in to fight. And it's just basic economics. Has nothing to do with greed or promoters. It's what's left over. And so, especially as some pros that don't sell one ticket. And then, they're like, oh yeah, man, this guy like ripped me off. I'm like, bro, where do you think the money comes from?
Well, it's not just that too. It's the sanctioning of authorities as well, right? Because we've all seen
overhead.
the sheets where they charge us for what, if this bout's a pro bout, how much more that costs to officiate versus a bout that's amateur. Those fees look different. And so, a lot of these folks that are sanctioning, sometimes they're actually hurting it because, and I mean that with respect. I mean, I know they do as good as they can do on that, but it's not, the problem is with our sport is the turnout for attendance. There's not 10,000 people coming to a Muay Thai pro show. If there were, then I would be on board. Everybody should be pro, at that point. I think even it was, and I don't know if I should name a name who said this, but, a pretty well-known person in the industry said that we should just pay everybody. That you should just turn them all pro. It doesn't mean they need to get a huge purse, but even if it's $50, $100, a small amount, that everybody is just pro, because their perspective was that just the amateur side of it hurts the growth of the sport and keeps everybody amateur. So do you
think, Rami, that maybe there should be a point where it's a cutoff? You know what I mean? And then that way, I was thinking about this like the other night, just to myself. Like, once you hit 25 fights, you're a professional. Like, not, and hear me out, okay? It might be a crazy thought, but it might solve a lot of these problems, right? It might solve a lot of these problems because it's very difficult. I put on pro show, you put on pro shows. Pros are hard to come by. They're hard to find. So, one, they're very hard to find. And you have amateurs with 40 plus fights just because they're like, fuck this. I don't want to get stuck in the pros fighting once a month, once a year. I'd rather just fight once a month. I stay busy every month fighting, and I like this, this sport. And honestly, it doesn't even make enough money as a career anyway. So what incentive do they have to turn pro? They don't have a lot of incentive.
I got an answer for you. So you asked about if there should be a cutoff. I actually do think this will resolve everything. If everybody can listen to this and try to be open-minded with it. We have novice, 0 to 5 fights.
Right.
And then intermediate, 6 to 15. And then elite, 15 and up. There is no word amateur. There is no word pro. Try to imagine how many fights people will get this way. 0 to 5 fights, and then 5 to 15, 6 to 15, and then 15 plus.
It's experience based, right?
After 15 fights, man, it doesn't really matter at that point.
Thiago, you seen 10 people with 10 fights that are like monster. Like they know how to fight. They're really, really good.
Fantastic fighters.
Yeah, and they're dangerous and they're smart. And they will give a pro fighter a problem.
Run for their money, minimum.
We've all seen them. So, I think if we were to do this cutoff, this will help everybody. And
then eventually, I think I had a little bit of this conversation with Rich from Hawaii about when we should turn them pro and how just have everybody and here's what happens now as the community grows, that cutoff needs to increase, right? Because in boxing, we lost him again. Rami, we lost him again.
Technical difficulties this evening, folks.
Oh no.
He will be back.
Well, my thoughts was, and I want to share this with Rami, is that eventually we're gonna have a bigger market, and so that 15 bouts might have to move to 20 bouts. And the 20 bouts has to move to, now pro is at 35 because we have so many people competing and the talent pool is large. It's kind of like boxing, right? But we're in the infancy phase of the sport.
But what number is enough, right? Where you don't have to even talk about going higher. So it's 25 enough, to be considered elite 35, like those 10 bouts. Of course, there's experience to be gained in every single bout.
I personally think at 15 bouts, you've seen enough to have said you've seen a lot. It just depends on where you're fighting.
Well, what
Because
if
you all know
photographers, bro? Like let's just take it out of this game and say, okay, if you're a photographer, how many portfolio shoots are you doing unpaid until you can say that you have enough experience that you
now
should get paid? You know,
That's a good question.
there's an issue with the, because here's the deal. We all understand that not all shows are created equal. What do I mean by that? You go, I only fight on my local show with my local promoter, and he matches me up, and we all know I know everybody that's watching can name a promoter that go, I know exactly who I'm talking about in my neighborhood, and they just stay in their kind of in their bubble. They don't fight outside of it, and they get matched with easy fights, and then all of a sudden they have a winning record with 15 fights, and suddenly they're like, oh yeah, let's turn pro. I'm ready to turn pro. And the real world hits them like a brick. And all of a sudden they didn't realize that they were that hot in the first place, right? Because they were babied. But what do we do with those people, right? Like, do we go, well, that's lesson learned for,
It's not about what you do with those people. The person that can do the right thing should do the right thing, and I think like it comes back to people like the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open being a role model to other tournaments, and obviously it goes back to the state that you're in. I understand that, but doing something like this, like what you guys are doing, having pro fighters given an option to fight, is something that something that other tournaments should be looking into. And I get it. States, will stop you in certain states, but we have like states like Denver, Delaware, and Indiana, where they're close to other big cities that we should go to and give these opportunities.
Yeah, they have essentially no commission, right? Like there's no state regulation in those states. And so they can basically do whatever they want to do. With that being said, that's kind of a scary thought a little bit, but at the same time, like if I know that a certain sanctioning body is shady, I'm not sure, right?
Those scary things. We have those scary things even in other states that does have a sanctioning body.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
But at least it goes back to who's running the show.
Right.
Because I'm sure there's states where they have sanctionings, and it's still like, man, that guy's officiating. Man, that I don't want that guy for my fight.
Yeah, man, it's a little scary sometimes. And most of these guys officiating nowadays, at least in Arizona, almost all of the guys officiating have been punched in the face quite a bit, and they know exactly what it looks like. But you can always tell the ones that haven't.
There's always that one. There's always
the ones that haven't even taken a class, and they're like, oh yeah, you watch the YouTube and now you want to be a referee, and you don't know what it feels like to get hit like that. You don't know what it feels like when you're going down, what it looks like, right? You don't know what it looks like when an athlete is pretending to be okay and they're not okay. Like it's one thing to be told what it looks like, and there's another thing to actually have experienced it and be able to ref and stuff. And we can go into a whole nother thing about officials. That's something I've always wanted to. That's one of my topics on the list is requirements for officials.
So this is something.
Stay tuned for that one, folks, because that is going to be one I'm going to dive into. Is what I personally think official qualifications should be, and it certainly wouldn't have. A lot of people in my book would not
get a job.
You would not under my book, not under my freaking watch. I would not, and so I feel like that's another topic for another day. But the last question here is, how do we implement a pro, or elite division, how would we start to implement that? And that's, I think, some of the people, how will we start to implement a division where pros and amateurs can compete together, right? Or pros and amateurs by the state definition. What would you do? Because I mean, I've tried to change the law in Arizona, and it is very, very difficult, extremely difficult.
We can go where it's easier. Where
Right.
it's easier. So what I mean by where it's easier, we can go to Delaware, we can go to Indiana, we can go to Denver, to like East Coast, Midwest, and West Coast areas.
Washington
And
State is another one. Yep.
Washington State.
State. We can go to these states that are close to the bigger ones, and where we can still get the Muay Thai community to come and do it like maybe every 3 months or every 4 months, a big tournament. Whereas you're getting the novice, intermediate, and elite. There is no amateur, there is no pro. You got 0 to 5 fights, this is where you go. You got 6 to 15, this is where you go. You more, this is where you go. There is no amateur. Everybody's allowed to come. And if we do that like at least 3 times or 4 times at the worst case scenario, imagine if US Open did that and another tournament body did that and another tournament body did that. Nobody would be complaining they're not getting fights at the very minimum.
Agreed.
I think the biggest issue in doing that, and I would just say, and we talk about this a lot, how much work goes into this, Rami. It takes the group, like other people, to want to get some of us who have been doing it a while, somebody that has a camp that's in Washington State, that's in Delaware, that steps up and says, hey, we want to help you guys, support you. We're here, we're willing. We just don't hear enough of that. I mean, people aren't really chomping at the bit to promote Muay Thai or, put on tournaments.
With that being said, I will reach out to the community, as he just said that, with my shameless plug. If anybody wants us to go to Washington and has the resources, we will go up there. We will put on an event. We've done 2 in New York. We will go up there if somebody's serious, because I always get these people at the tournaments. They come up to me like, Thiago, I want to do a tournament in Hawaii. I want to do a tournament. I want you guys to come out. I'm like, okay, we will happily come out. Here's what we need from you. We need a team. That's the reason why it's in Arizona, is because I have a team here. I have all my resources here. Absolutely, I would go, but I would need help. And then of course we can talk about profits and splits and all that.
Or if you find an Arabian prince with the money.
Or Arabian Prince, but that's up your alley, Rami. If you can find me an Arabian Prince
with a gold-plated Hummer as well.
That's all I need to pay for the tournament.
Nah, man, gold-plated Hummer, that's 20 years ago, bro.
No, I'm 43, bro. I'm old school.
Oh man. Well,
so Rami, I have a quick question here. When you're in the gym and you're training fighters, right? What are you looking for? How can you tell who is going to be the next pro? How do you have that conversation with your fighters?
Without the conversation, it's usually the ones that talk a lot that will end up not doing nothing. After all these years, I smell them now. So how can you tell? It's by what they don't say. And we live in a day and age now where social media has made it even worse. Everybody is so quick to want to fight and so quick to want to turn pro.
There's no patience.
Not do the hard work.
No patience in building their own skill set.
I mean, no disrespect, but I don't blame them. I blame the system. I blame the system. I blame I never blame the child. I always blame the mother. And what I mean by that is the reason why is because you look at, and I get it, like over here in America, we have to have a business way of teaching, but where it's helping the fighters do the wrong thing is we always want to teach a new plan, a new lesson plan. Monday different workout, Tuesday different workout, Wednesday different workout. Because if you don't do it that way, you're afraid the customer is gonna get bored and then they're gonna leave. You know, I get it. You know, but at the same time, we have to find the middle ground. And a lot of gyms and a lot of trainers don't know how to do that. They don't have that skill. You know, so that makes fighters always want to skip the hard way. That's why they don't have patience, like Thiago said, because they always learn going to the next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing. You know, but how do you pick up on who's going to be good to turn pro and become a fighter? Like your question is because it's by seeing what they do when you're not looking.
That's right.
You know, and everybody nowadays, everybody and their mother will not do anything without putting it on Instagram.
Agreed. That's agreed. There's a lot of people that you know, and it's funny because we were talking about that with Ryan last week about how, you know, social media is kind of, you know, it's a good and a bad thing, right? Because back in the day, social media used to be it used to be like there was no social media, right? So the promoter had to promote everything, and social media kind of gave the power back to the athlete to be able to promote themselves and build their own following. But that comes with the price, right? Because now you have to keep the content, and you have to keep that following, and you have to constantly post. Because if you don't do that, you lose them like that. Because nobody has the attention span. They have attention span of a 2-year-old, and so you have to keep your followers engaged, and you have to post every day, and you have to do that. That's a whole nother job when they could be focusing on just getting better at fighting, right? Or getting better in general.
That you posted, we were going to show that to everybody too, right? Maybe this is a good time to show that.
Yeah, like let's post it. So that was the results of the survey. Basically, it wasn't a lot of people that voted. One guy just didn't. I think it was 2 guys that didn't. Just like, I don't care about Pro Muay Thai. I'm like, well, that's great. You should care if you care about the sport. But and then one person said, you know, like a couple people were talking about maybe like, you know, teaching private, teaching at a gym. But is that really a pro career, or is that a coaching career? Right? That's not a pro career. You're not making a living on fighting. So it's a pretty, you know, I would say landslide observation from the community that there is a problem with turning pro. Nobody really wants to do it. I mean, it's right there.
And the reason why they're saying is because you, as the question was posed, is that there's not enough fights to survive, right? So there is
not enough fights
to survive. Can I ask you a question, guys?
Money.
Absolutely.
So what's the point of turning pro?
You would think it would be to make
any other sport
as a career, I would think, but
in any other sport, you have acquired a skill set that makes you an elite at that sport, right? So if I'm a pro runner, I am in the top 1%. I have acquired a skill set like any other job, right? You start as an intern, you get paid jack, right? You don't do anything. You learn the skill. You practice and apprentice and learn it. Now you have so much value that you know you have value. You should get paid for.
The photographer
watching an athlete, a pro athlete compete is something that's very valuable. It's something that's amazing to watch, no matter what sport it is, right? You could do skateboarding, you could do X Games, you could be, you know, running, it could be, it's just an impressive thing that most people have not attained that level.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm gonna blow your mind right now.
All right, I'm listening. I'm always ready.
I hope everybody's listening, because this is gonna end everybody's question as to why they shouldn't turn pro because they're not gonna have any money fights. The real reason.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so when you're fighting amateur, do you get paid?
No,
you don't get paid. So you can't complain that I'm not gonna get paid a lot if I turn pro because I'm not gonna get. So that right away should be out of the question. Your main focus is whether you're gonna get fights or not. And if you truly cared about having a legacy and having a name as a pro fighter and a pro career, then you would find a way. And that way is very simple. Very simple. You would work like you every other human being in America is doing. You work, and then you do 2 trips a year to Thailand. Two trips a year to Thailand, 1 month each. And then you got 12 months. So one month in the beginning of the year, and then in the middle of the year. So you go to as soon as you arrive to Thailand, you get a fight, and then right before you leave Thailand, you get another fight. That's the minimum. So if you do those 2 trips, that's 4 pro fights right there. And then if you get 2 more fights in America, that's 6 fights right there.
Right.
That's 6 fights right there.
But it doesn't solve the problem.
The problem
what do we do in the U.S.?
Fights. Yeah, but that's the beginning.
Right.
So if we get fighters to think like this, my fighters, and then your fighters, and his fighters, and his fighters. Now I
send them regularly. I send my guys all the time to Thailand. I love sending them out there.
But what happens if everybody follows this method? Now there's more pro fighters. But if we keep saying, "Oh, don't turn them pro because there's no opportunities. Don't turn them pro," that's never gonna fix the problem. And I'm not gonna wait till this guy does it so I can have my guys. No, I'm gonna go ahead and start with my own. And I think that if we start to think that it's not just about the money, because let's be real, man, there is no real money as a pro fighter to make a living. So if you're gonna stop your fighters from turning pro because there's not enough fights to make a living, you're never gonna change this what's happening.
Carly Joe says there are a lot of 9-to-5s that won't let you take that kind of vacation. So what jobs would you suggest? I thought it was a good question.
That's a great question. And that's an honest question. But it goes back to this. Look, our lives, our choice to be in the sport, we are choosing to be special. And if we want to be special, we have to do special things. And this is anything in life. We are not regular people. We are not a 9-to-5 people. Even though we do live this life, we are choosing a lifestyle that is very different. So we have to live different, and we have to do things different. And yes, it's going to be hard, but this is the life that we chose. And if we truly want this life, you want to be a fighter, you want to be a pro fighter, you got to live this lifestyle. Tiago, you remember Rami 20 years ago? People thought I lived in New York.
Rami, to get you guys a little insight, lived in Philly and would drive to New York and train in New York City because it's the only place that he wanted to train. I thought that was bonkers. And it was a long drive there and a long drive back. And he would do it almost every other day, sometimes every day in the week. And I was like, what the heck? He would go, he would train, I would train. I was there. And then he's like, I gotta go. I gotta get home. And I'm like, holy crap, this guy's gonna
go home.
And he would drive to Philly, and then I'd see him 2 days later, like it's like his regular commute. It was wild.
I was a full college student. I was a full-time college student, and if you want this life, it's not gonna be easy, guys. But we have to push our fighters and push our sport to understand that it's not going to be easy. But that's why, look, there's a reason why
you paved the way for the future, right?
Yes.
Well, let me add something too about I'm a marketer, I own a marketing agency. And one thing that we have not talked about tonight is the impact of how the public perceives what they're watching. So if we tell the public this is an amateur fight, they're like, oh, it's kids and it's this and, no big deal. The minute that you say this is pro, the minute that you say this is pro Muay Thai, they're like, oh, really? I didn't even know that I had pro. Oh, wow. Who is it going to be? Oh, never heard of those people. But they get interested because it's pro, because the word pro is used. So on that alone, this constant stuck in amateur status, it does not allow the sport to grow in that way. Nobody will ever get paid unless it goes to that where pro Muay Thai is happening a lot more often, so that people do see, young kids, the next generation, you talk about them, they're coming up and seeing, is there a path for me in this? Can I even make a side hustle out of the sport that I love to do? So,
I had a fighter, John Brewer. Do you remember John, Rami?
Yes,
I don't know if you remember him. Johnny, I remember when he was 17 and his dad came up to me and he was like, and I was like, listen, I was like, your son can make a real career in this sport. I'm going to be very honest with you. He's not going to be wealthy. Not in the fact that he also had an opportunity to be in the army in intelligence. And we all know intelligence in the army lines up for a really nice cush job in Washington, where he's at right now. He retired from the military. It's in the private sector. Very comfortable job. John could have been a world champion
monster.
Easily. He was just the toughest kid I've ever met. This kid was tough as nails and good and smart. He was very difficult to beat. I think he took a silver medal in IFMA by split decision while he was 17. He was really good. I think it was Malaysia when I went to Malaysia with him. This kid was spectacular, but his dad was like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, he has this really nice, well-paying job, guaranteed, man. He's never gonna see war. He's never gonna see any kind of shit. He's gonna have an easy life. He's gonna have a big old house in Washington, D.C., in Virginia, probably somewhere. And that's exactly what happened. Who knows if I would have told John's dad, be like, hey, he's gonna make a good amount of money as a world champion at the top 1 percentile in his, maybe that would have swayed him, right? Especially as a father, right? You're looking as a father, and you're going, my son's gonna get his head pounded in, and you've seen a lot of retired fighters. What happens to them? Some of them do really well, some of them not so much. But man, if there was a little more to be made, maybe we would have a lot more pro athletes. It's kind of like MMA, right? Like suddenly everybody's in an MMA fighter, pro fighter. Everybody wants to turn pro, and there's a lot of pro MMA getting $500 a fight. But what's happening is there's an abundance in the talent pool as well. So you're seeing like now actual talent, rise to the top of the surface. And so maybe that's what does need to happen, right? Like, I think, the final, actually, I'm going to throw it to you, Rami. What are your final thoughts on this? What do you think we should do ultimately at the end of the day to really, really help pros, or set the road for them, right? Set the pave the road for these pros. What do you think we need to do? Final thoughts, Rami.
Final thoughts on what we need to do to help our pros get more opportunities and continue the growth of their pro career. We are stronger than I. If we put our hands together, the big players in this sport. I've said this many times. I know you've heard me and you talked about this many times, Thiago. The big, role models in the sport have to work together, man, and open opportunities. But more importantly, back it up, not just talk. For one, they have to make that move. And as long as they're afraid to make that move, there will be no change. Make the move, turn pro. And then once we get more pride, that's one. Two, you want more money, right? You want more money. The second step is work on promoting yourself. If you want the sport to be big, you have to be big. The sport can't be big if you're not big. They go one hand in hand. Like we brought up the marketing thing. The fighters have to start marketing themselves. They don't market themselves. They don't promote themselves. And then yet they want, I get this guy tells me, oh, I got a big following. You got to pay me more. My man, I don't have no problem paying you money. But what are you bringing to the table? I'm giving you an opportunity to do what you love. What are you doing in return? So step one, make the move, turn pro. Step two, promote yourself. Make sure you build a following. Build a following. And then step three, you start knowing how to talk. I got another fighter, he comes up to me. He came up to me wanting the same thing, wanting more money. But he said, Rami, I'm going to sell you 100 tickets. And I'm not going to sell you 100 tickets of the cheap ones. I'm going to sell you 100 tickets of the expensive ones. This is what I want. You know what I said? I didn't even think about it. I said, okay, you get it. You get what you want. I didn't even argue with him.
Huh.
He came to me and he bought 100 tickets of the 90s and the $100 tickets.
Jesus.
He got what he wanted. I didn't even argue. And he probably got paid more than what anybody's paying him right now in the country. But this is how it goes.
But you got to hustle.
But it doesn't happen overnight. How does it happen? You're an amateur fighter coming into the sport. You got to promote yourself. You can't just wait till you have a fight to start promoting yourself. Here, every once in a while, there was a great day in class. Man, I can't wait to fight. And then, oh man, I got a fight coming. Who wants to come see me? I'm ready. Like, build it up. You can't just come fight time. Okay, guys, I got a fight. Come buy tickets.
Yeah, that's the same in investing, right? You come to the investor the first time and you're like, hands out, like, give me money to start my thing. You need to provide value first. You got to provide value first to others.
The concept.
Then once you provide the value, then you can ask for things back.
Of course.
Do this. If you guys want to fight on other shows, put yourself like the promoter. You got a fighter that, if you're the promoter, you got a fighter that sells you 50 tickets, and then you got another fighter that sells you 10 tickets. Who are you going to support? It's common sense.
Common sense. Rami, I want to say thank you for joining us. This has been a really fun episode. I was coming up with ideas on the fly, to be honest with you, like thinking about things and cutoffs, and there was a lot of cool stuff, like implementing this. But basically, it sounds like turn pro.
Everyone, turn pro now. All of them.
I mean, it sounds pretty. It makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, I had one fighter, Arshiam. He's like, he decided he wants to turn pro. He went to Thailand, fought for a legit Thai, and he did fantastic. And now he's going there. He's going back again, and he's excited to go back because now he's like, holy cow, there's a whole world out here of fighters that I could compete against. He almost doesn't even want to go back. He said he's like, I don't know if I want to fight in the U.S. So I'm like, no, you have to fight in the U.S. You have to fight everywhere, man. Wherever the fights take you, you're gonna take it. But he's very excited to go to Thailand. I think that's a great plan. I do it with my athletes all the time. I send them out.
Let's not forget, like in the conversation, I think the most profound takeaway, at least for me, Crew Rami, is that perhaps we need to rethink our reward system. Right? You touched on this a little bit. Some will define a professional as someone with Floyd Mayweather type of money, but instead, perhaps we need to think more about the other benefits of being an elite, as you call it, or a pro fighter, or some other people call it. As a pro, you'll have one of the most unique life experiences you can imagine. You'll challenge yourself on a continuing basis. You'll travel across the country, throughout the world. You'll make new personal and business connections. You'll create bonds that are unbreakable, right? You know this because you've lived this life. So, perhaps this is what people should really dream of when they dream about being a professional. And, the money, if you're doing the right thing and your heart's in the right place, usually the money will follow, right? the universe tends to reward those types of people.
Ryan, you're a smart man. You know that? You're a smart man, because this is what everybody should have took from what Ryan just said. People don't get lucky. If you got to look at life like, you know, that video game you're playing, and there's, as you go on, there's like coins, right? And sometimes the coins. So this is what it's like, man. You got to turn pro and take the opportunity, and then there's opportunities waiting for you. And like you said, like he said, you're gonna go and you're gonna meet people. You're gonna see people that might open up other doors. You know, you can't just keep saying, "Oh, I'm afraid, I'm not ready. I'm afraid, I'm not ready," and then you're gonna get to do what you love. For those that are young and might not understand that, one day you're gonna get old. 10 years from now, you're gonna say, "I shoulda, coulda, woulda." First thing you could say, because you won't be able to take that time back.
Absolutely.
That's true. I wouldn't be here, like, how, you know, not even just for the fighters, right? Like becoming a promoter, or getting involved in other ways. That was how my journey started. I started training at the club, and then now here we are, and I know Rami, you know, and I would have never met Ryan and, you know, all the people who I've gained. I mean, the thousands of people and the international global connections that now I wouldn't give up for the world, you know. So yeah, it's definitely changed my life for sure.
Well, with that being said, that was a great final thought. Thank you, Rami, for joining us. We hope to have you back on to have some more interesting debate on what to do with some of these problems, right? Next week, we're going to have Rudy from California. We're going to talk about what to do with sandbaggers. There's a lot.
Man, a lot of them, bro. I want to name a few names right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Hey, man, hey, if you want to join us next week, you're welcome to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Rudy's a lot of fun. He's been to our tournament a couple times. I love having him. He's always a stand-up guy. And I always see him online, like super upset, you know, like, it's freaking this and that. And I love it because he's passionate about the sport. He really loves it. He really, really loves the sport. And you can tell he oozes it when he posts about it. It doesn't come from a malicious thing. It usually, you know, this grinds my gears. This thing is wrong and it needs to be corrected. And so I wanted to give him a platform to kind of talk about that. And, you know, we can talk about some of the things that we've done as a company to really, you know, combat some of these people that just straight up lie. Not even like a little bit, like just straight, just lie. And, you know, we're going to have that next week. That's going to be Tuesday, the 23rd of April at 7 p.m. MST time. Rami, again, thank you very much for joining us. It was a blast. And we look forward to having you again.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you gentlemen for what you guys are doing. You guys are helping the sport in many ways.
Thank you, Rami. So are you, man. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Show's taking off, brother.
Right.
Freedom is coming.
Freedom is coming.
I mean.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have
Take
a
care,
good night.
guys. Take care.
Bye, guys.